Child-free living is a thing nowadays. It's a trending subject. And this is actually something I brought up just casually on stream in between other conversations and songs and skits and things. But we started talking about it and I was like, you know what? No. I'm going to take a little bit of time off stream so I can even put together a little bit of a vague dot point list for this because I want to cover this one properly. I am a ex-child-free person, as I suppose every parent is, and now currently a parent. So a bit of context is that I originally wanted to be child-free, actually, full stop. I was definitely preferring that to being a parent. I thought that I would probably never be a parent. My husband in a different camp, so he really wanted kids. So that's where I come from. And it's ironic because I actually think child-free people and the people who want to be child-free often would make for the best parents. And let me explain this, because it is an irony. It's an interesting irony. But a lot of the time, the people who want to be parents, they have a fantasy delusion idea in their brain about what parenting is. They have an entire storyline worked up in their mind brain where they are the superhero mum or dad, and they've got wonder children who are walking around doing exactly what they want them to do. They look exactly like they imagine them. They like basketball, so the child is gonna like basketball, and they play out the entire lifespan of this child in their head prior to their birth. They've got this idea of what parenting is because obviously they want it, so they have to want something. They want this idea, and it is an idea because until you become a parent, you don't really know what it is to be a parent. So the people that want to be parents actually just want their idea of what parenting is. I think this is dangerous, to be honest, for the kids and the parents, because there is a actually 100% chance that your idea of what being a parent is wrong. So this fantasy that you worked up in your head, 100% chance is not going to be the reality of the situation. And some people get really bitter when that happens. For example, I think one of the most common things people know about is someone really wants to have a baby girl or a baby boy and the opposite gender comes out. And you're like, I'm still calling it Frederick. It's one of the most obvious situations. You hear about it all the time where especially dads are really upset because they wanted a son to play baseball with. And instead, they've got a daughter and she's better at baseball than they are. Happens all the time, right? But it goes much further than that. The entire idea of parenting is often not what they expected it to be, and then they're disappointed, and then that gets projected on the kid, and then you've got lifelong trauma, and then that kid grows up, and one day they hate the world, and they decide that they're going to burn it to the ground, and now it's on fire, and now whose fault was it? Whereas oftentimes people who are child-free in their preference, they have not spent time sitting around fantasizing about a life with children. Therefore, they don't have expectations. And oftentimes, I think that's actually better. Because putting expectations on a tiny cluster of cells that has yet to grow into a fully formed human being is not the best. Not the best for them, and not the best for the parent either. Always wanted to be a girl dad. I love that phrase. I love that phrase, girl dad. I'm a girl mum, and I have to be honest, I was relieved that she was going to be a girl, because for me, I was in the child-free camp. I hadn't fantasized much, but for me, it was just the fact that the cleaning up the pee would be easier. These boys, they got their swizzle sticks and it just goes everywhere, and potty training would be a disaster. At least with the girl, I thought there wouldn't be quite as much projection. I was surprised to learn there is still quite a lot of projection, but I suppose it's easier. Cleaning up the poo is easier for the boys. Is it? How? I don't understand how. Anyhow, yesterday, you don't have to be as careful with direction. Oh, that's pretty easy. That's pretty easy though. You probably should be careful with direction anyway, just for other reasons. But yesterday I was at the baby gym with our 4-month-old baby. I have never seen her so happy in my life. She was so happy. The amount of laughing and giggling and cooing, and she does this thing where she looks like she's running on the spot. Obviously, she can't stand or sit. She's just on the ground on her back, but she's running on the spot, kicking, and her arms are flailing, and she's got this giant smile on her laugh, and she's so happy. Giant smile on her laugh. Giant smile on her face. And she's so happy. And it was one of the most beautiful things ever. But it was also hilarious because it was a group full of new parents, mostly mums. Only 2 dads were present. There was a lot of mums with no dad there. Argument for another day that should not be the case. But it was really interesting because you had the full gamut of parents there. You had people that genuinely looked like they really didn't want to be there. And then you had people that were having the time of their life. You had all the babies in their pastel clothes, and then you had Mary and Patrick dressed in all black with their child dressed in all black. You know, you had the full gamut, right? And it was especially hilarious because you could tell whose baby was whose. It was so funny. You could look around the room and you could literally see mini-me's of the various parents. It was actually brilliant. Like, you could put the babies in a cluster on the side and the parents on the other side, and you'd be able to play, 2s a pair. Like, you'd be able to match them up. It wouldn't be difficult. Golf, baby. But yeah, it was an interesting setup. I think actually maybe we may have scared some people off showing up like that. The goal was not actually to show up as, goth baby, goth family so much. We had like bright purple sneakers. Like, we weren't all black. I didn't have black mascara tears. We just like dark colors, okay? But I think we scared people off. Though people were not social. I was kind of hoping, could make friends and things. No. None of that. Be like, hi, oh, your baby's so cute. And they're like, don't look at me. I'm like, okay, I'll back off. Yeah, you can tell it's Nora because she's playing a ukulele and singing Aussie, 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 oi, 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 which is strange because you can't even speak yet. It's amazing, the skills. She's actually really, really into music, though. So far, at least. As a baby, she's really into music. She loves listening to it, so maybe there's something there. We'll find out. We won't force it, obviously. Anyhow, this got me thinking about this topic because it came up on stream because recently we were at this baby jam, and honestly, I've now kind of done a bit of a 180 because when I first started on this journey post-birthing child, I was pretty miserable. For the first 3 months, I did not like motherhood. I didn't even like it. Never mind love it. I honestly, hate is a strong word, but I really didn't like motherhood. Loved my baby more than anything. And I was like, you know what? If I have to sacrifice for the rest of my life, I will. Because she's amazing and I love her more than anything. But I'm not enjoying this process of being a mother. I hate it. It's awful. I'll do it because of her, and she's the shiny beacon of all things good, but the process sucks. I really didn't like it. Really didn't like it. And now we're at the 4-month period, and I'm on the other end of the spectrum, and I am loving it. I'm actually really loving it. So I've had a lot of experiences here. I'm still at the start. I'm still at the 4-month period. She's 4 months old, but I think I've got a few things I can now say about this subject because I've lived it, and I am at this part of parenting. It's weird. After, I think it was PewDiePie who actually said this in one of his recent videos where he's talking about having kids. After about, seemingly, he said 2 years, but I would argue even less. It's almost like people forgot how to parent. Like, parents that have had kids have just like somehow wiped every memory of the experience and all knowledge is gone. Like, the advice you get from people who had a kid 10 years ago makes no sense. And you're like, have you ever had a child? Sometimes you look at your own parents or your in-laws and you're like, how did you raise children? I don't understand. You don't seem to know what you're doing here. Like, it's like people just forget. So I also feel like being at this start period of having a child is an advantage here. But I have things to say on the Childfree Living people that make videos, because I used to watch these. Again, I was in the child-free camp. I wanted to be child-free. I was gonna try for children because Patrick wanted kids, but I was maybe secretly hoping it wouldn't work out. You know, I didn't really love the idea, and I used to watch these videos. And I used to be like, yeah, I agree, yeah, get him. And the people who make these videos are people that don't have kids. They're people who live child-free, and they can speak to that experience of being child-free. Honestly, so can I. I was child-free for a long time. But oftentimes I actually think they get quite a lot of things wrong because they're child-free. Like, I think that the fact that they haven't gone through this process means that a number of things they say sound right. They do. They sound correct. They sound logical. But once you've lived and had the experience of being a parent, they're not right. They're wrong. Sorry. You're wrong. And so I thought, let me address these things. Let me address these things on stream. And we've got people here in chat. We've got a mix of people. So there are people here who are parents, and there are people here who are not parents. So you can feel free to put your 2 cents in as well, and we can get the full gamut of ideas and opinions in the chat. But I'll start with some of the cons, some of the negatives that in the Childfree Living videos people get wrong. And the first one, I think, is one of the major cons that I've witnessed people getting wrong, only because they get the extent of it wrong. A lot of people talk about how having kids is painful. Like, there's a lot of pain involved. Some child-free people discover the horrors of an episiotomy, which is, for those who don't know, when the baby is coming out, sometimes it's not fitting because they got giant heads and it's not coming out. So the obstetricians will snip your manana a little bit to make room for the baby to come out. Snip. Down there. Very sensitive region. Literally chopping into it. Yes, that is something that happens, and it is very painful. And some people discover that and they go, oh my lordy! Taking scissors to the down there? Cutting into it? Are you kidding? You know, and they're like freaking out. They're freaking out. And sometimes people will discover other, pregnancy symptoms or labor symptoms or postpartum symptoms. And they're like, yeah, it's painful. I don't want to do it because it's painful. It wrecks your body. I don't want to wreck my body. No matter how much you may think it's painful or uncomfortable, you are wrong. It is much worse. Every single stage is so much more painful and worse than you think it is. Every time I've watched one of these Childfree Living videos and they mention that, some of them don't even mention that, by the way, but every time they do, they're like, oh, this is painful. I'm like, honey, you don't know the start of it. They might mention 4 or 5 symptoms when there's 700. Every stage, pregnancy, labor, And postpartum, especially that last one, is so much more painful than you think it is. So much worse than you think it is. Your body is so much more wrecked than you think it will be. And there is so much more pain involved than you think you will have. And even if you think I'm pretty pain tolerant, it really drives you. It really drives you. So that's the first con that Child-Free Living videos get wrong. The second one, and this is one that I'm guilty of, a lot of Child-Free Living videos either skip over this point, or alternatively, they downplay this point, and that is the mum guilt or the mum fear. Both of them. So the mum guilt that, oh, am I not doing enough? Is my child okay? The mum fear, something's going to happen to my kid. And, you know, people talk about that being something that's like not fun, and they don't want to have that because it's not enjoyable. And obviously, no one likes guilt. You know, when you spend a bit too much money on something, like you bought a pair of pants and you don't like them, and you're like, I spent $120 on those pants and I don't even like them, and now I wear them, and every time I wear them I don't like them because they give me a saggy butt or whatever it is, and you feel guilty. Yeah, and you don't like that. It's not the same thing. It is not the same thing. Child-free people do not understand how utterly crippling this mum guilt thing is. It is not just oh damn, I did that wrong. It is crippling. The fear that something's going to happen to your kid is crippling. You're already not sleeping because they're screaming half the night, but they give you 1 hour to sleep and you're lying in bed and you cannot sleep because you're like, she's going to stop breathing. She's lying there and she's going to stop breathing. You're freaked out at all times. The guilt you feel every time you make any decision. I have to stop breastfeeding because it's not working. The fact that I'm stopping breastfeeding means I'm the worst parent in the world. Like any decision. I bought this shirt. I should have bought a different shirt. The guilt is crippling. Like, I cannot overstate it. So that's something that I don't think I could have comprehended prior to having kids. And the third con is, no matter how unrelenting you think parenting is, it is more unrelenting than that. I would say that's the biggest con. It is the biggest con. You know how people say, oh, I like when I'm playing with kids that I can give them back to their parents at the end. And people are like, oh yeah, I could still stick around the kid longer than that. There is no end point. It is unrelenting. It doesn't stop. You don't get a break. There's no such thing as a break. Ever. You're like, oh yeah, but you can give the kid to the grandparents and they'll look. The entire time the kid is with the grandparents, you are still thinking about the kid, and you're worried that the grandparents are gonna, forget something or do something wrong. You put the kid in daycare and you will still be worried. We've now toured multiple daycares, and all of the daycares offer texting services because the parents are constantly texting the people who run the daycares, freaking out about their kids. There is no break. And it is, literally non-stop for a very long time. You don't understand the level of unrelenting until you're in it. And this very much goes for the lack of sleep as well. You can be one of those people that totally parties all night, doesn't sleep very, very much, and is okay with it. And you can do that every weekend. You can even do that for 3-4 days in a row. You don't know what it feels like to live on 2-3 hours of sleep for 3 months. 3 months where not a single day, you don't get a single night of sleep. 3 months, every single night is like a staggered 2.5 hours of sleep total. After the first week, you're like, I think I will die. After the first 2 weeks, you're like, how am I not dead yet? After 3 months, you cannot comprehend what that would feel like. So there are multiple elements to it, but certainly the looking after the kid is unrelenting. Like, I want to sit down and read some of my notes for my course. I'm a full-time student as well as doing all the other things I'm doing right now. I can't get through a paragraph looking away from the baby. If I'm currently looking after the baby and she's not asleep, if I'm reading a paragraph, I'll get through a sentence and then she'll start crying because I'm not looking at her and I'm not playing with her. She literally has to be asleep in her carrier on me for me to be able to study. It's unrelenting. No one would sign up for a 22 plus hour job that you work alongside your actual job, except babies are very cute. It's not 22 plus hours, it's 24. It really is 24. Didn't sleep a wink for the first week. Very, very normal as well. And yeah, you really can't imagine it until you're in it. You really can't. So those are the cons, but there are also pros that people who make child-free living videos don't get. And these are the ones that are more surprising. The first one is I've seen in a lot of child-free living videos, people say you can still be like a parent without being a parent. Now, I want to exclude people who adopt or who have kids via surrogacy, because that's different. Those parents are actually parents. I'm speaking about in these child-free living videos, they often say things like you can be a mentor or an auntie or an uncle, and you can be heavily involved in the child's life, and it's like being a parent without being a parent. I am so sorry, but that is so wrong. It is so wrong. This is not to say you shouldn't be a part of a kid's life. You shouldn't be a good auntie or uncle, but it's just not the same thing. It's not the same thing. I actually would go as far as saying it's not even in the ballpark. Like, you're standing, you can see all the way to the horizon, and you still can't see the reality of being a parent if you are in the kid's life as a mentor or an auntie or an uncle. It is nothing like it. Nothing. Zero. Oh. Unless you have assumed the role of the primary caregiver in its entirety, like, say, if you are an auntie that essentially the kid has moved into the house with you and you are essentially the parent, in which case I would regard you as the parent. It's not the same thing. It doesn't matter how many days a week you meet up with the kid. It doesn't matter how much you love them. It is not the same thing. It's not the same thing. So, I'm sorry, child-free living people, but that's wrong. If you want to be in a kid's life as a parent, you have to actually be a parent. And again, that's not to say you shouldn't be in children's life as an auntie or uncle or mentor or whatever it is, but it's not even remotely similar. It's not even remotely similar. If you can hand the kid back, it's not the same thing. The relationship dynamic is not the same thing. Like I said, the exception to that rule is obviously if you adopted kids, if you had a kid through surrogacy, or if you are assuming that primary caregiver role in its entirety. But otherwise, it's just not the same thing. There is only one way to get the experience of parenting, and it is through being a parent. That is it. That is it. And that's a pro. That's a really good thing about parenting. It's the only way to get this life experience, and if you're a parent, you're getting it. The second thing that I find funny is that oftentimes with these child-free living videos, they'll say things like, yeah, I don't get that excited when I see a baby roll over. That I'm not going to stand there and be like, wow, you did so well. Because for me, a potato rolling over, a screaming potato who's made it onto their stomach means nothing. And honestly, I was in this camp as well. Because it's like, I can't imagine that being interesting. I can't visualize me seeing, a baby lifting its head and that being the most amazing thing ever. It's like, good job, you lifted your head. I've been doing that for like 30 years now. For me, it just sounds like the silliest thing. So when people in these videos will like That stuff doesn't excite me. That stuff is uninteresting to me. I was 100% on board. You cannot prepare yourself for the level of unnaturally, ridiculously, invigoratingly high levels of joy and excitement that you get from seeing your baby do those things. When you're an actual parent, it does not make sense. There is no logic to it. But when you see your baby lift their head, it is like you've won the lottery 700,000 times over. You feel like screaming from the rooftops. Our baby rolled on the 10th of January, and I remember the date because it was such an exciting experience. Patrick and I were like, oh my God, she rolled. It was so amazing. Never in my life did I think it would be such an amazing feeling. And it's so weird. It's so weird. Because again, like I said, prior to being a parent, there's no way that I would have thought that was possible. Even being a parent, I didn't think it was possible until I experienced it over and over again. Every little thing that she does, every time she reaches one of those milestones, it's just the most amazing thing in the world. And you don't really understand the gravitas of it until you've gotten to fully know this child as a potato that screams, that has this capability, and now it's morphed to have more capability, and then more, and then more, and then more, and they change, and their face changes, and their attitude, and everything changes, and you're like, wow. And there's no way you could predict that feeling. And it's a pro because it's such a beautiful thing. It's such a good feeling. It's an amazing feeling to feel on top of the world over and over again because you experienced that. Yeah. Here's the thing. That potato, you did that. And it did a thing. Exactly. And yeah, I just can't communicate that because as a child-free person, if you are one, I can understand why you would be like, sure, Jan. I believe you, Mary, whatever. Sure. I understand because I was in that position too, and I couldn't have possibly imagined it. But it's true. And the last one, which is a pro, is bodily fluids. The number of people, when they're making these child-free videos, that talk about the bodily fluids, that are like, I can't stand the thought of changing nappies and poo and babies drool and they make a mess. So it's not just bodily fluids, but mess, and they throw their food. Honestly, you get over that so quickly. I was surprised. I am a very naturally cleanly person. If you know me in real life, I am naturally very cleanly. I tend to try and keep things clean. So the idea of mess in any capacity ever, and most certainly something gross like poo and wee and drool, was something I really thought that I would struggle with. You get over it in 2 days. I'm not even kidding. Changing nappies is not difficult. It's really not hard. You get over it so quickly. Changing nappies is super easy. Them drooling on your hand, on their burp cloth, you get over it so quickly. So quickly. It's fine. It's actually really fine. I think there might be a tiny little subsection of people that are super OCD enough to have issues with it. But when you're in that situation, it ends up being so much more fine than you think it would be. So there we are. That's my list. Some cons. The pain is more painful than you think it will be at every stage in every way. The mum guilt and the fear is so much worse. It's crippling. So much worse than you think it will be. And no matter how unrelenting you think parenting is, it is more unrelenting than that. The pros are that the only way you can have this experience, honestly, is by being a parent. It is exclusive to that. That is the only way you can do it. If you think, oh, I can be child-free, but still, I can still dabble. No, you cannot. You will have an experience, but it will not be the same experience, and it won't even be close. Secondly, you'll be so excited by every little stage. It's amazing. For most parents, I think this is the case. Maybe it's not across the board, but most certainly from what I've seen from Baby Jim and other parent friends, and most certainly what I experienced, is it's so much more exciting than you think it will be. to an extent you cannot fathom. To an extent you cannot fathom. And it really brings so much joy and fulfillment to your life in a way that you cannot fathom. And it's weird, and it's illogical, and it should not be the case, but it is. And lastly, the bodily fluids and the mess is fine, and you get over it so quickly. You really do. Like, it's fine.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell, because clicking things is fun. If you want to see the full versions of these Twitch streams, then you can on my channel, twitch.tv/MaryAmber. And if you want to catch VODs, if you've missed streams, then check out my Patreon, Ninja Club, patreon.com/MaryAmber.